everyone, welcome to the next session of a Python tutorial. We're going to start with conditions. Python uses Boolean variables to evaluate conditions. The Boolean values, true and false, are returned when an expression is compared or evaluated. For example, we'll declare that x equals 2, and now we want to print different expression and see if they're true or false. So we want to print x is equal to 2, and in the comment we'll just add that it will print out true. So prints out true. Now if we say that print x equals 3, prints out false. It should print x is less than 3, prints out true. Okay, so let's check. True, true, false and false, true and true. Okay. The variable assignment is done using a single equals operator, whereas comparison between two variables is done using the double equals operator. The not equals operator is marked as an exclamation mark and equal. Next, we're going to look at the Boolean operators. The and or Boolean operators allow building complex Boolean expressions. For example, we'll say that name equals to the string John, and that age equals to 23. Now if we say if name equals John and age equals 23, then a colon, and we'll put an indentation under the if statement. So if the name equals John and that the age equals 23, we want to print your name is John and you are also 23 years old. Oops, old. Okay. And then the second one will be if name equals John or the name equals Rick, colon, print your name is either John or Rick. Okay, so let's execute the code. Okay, so your name is John and you are also 23 years old. Your name is either John or Rick, which is true. The in operator. The in operator could be used to check if a specified object exists within an iterable object container, such as a list. Okay, so if name in square bracket John and then Your name is either John or Rick. Okay, we'll execute the code. Your name is either John or Rick. Okay, so Python uses indentation to define code blocks instead of brackets. The standard Python indentation is 4 spaces, although tabs and any other space size will work as long as it is consistent. Notice that code blocks do not need any termination. Here is an example for using Python if statement using code blocks. Okay, so what that means is we do if, and then we'll put a statement that is true, and then there'll be an indentation, and then we'll tell it to do something, right? Okay, then there's elif, which is another statement that is true, and we always put the colon, and we'll put a comment that elif is basically saying else if, and then we indent and we tell it to do something else. And then at the end, we put else with a colon, and then we indent the next line, and then we do another thing as well. Okay? Alright, so let's just make an example. So x equals 2. Now if x equals 2 with a colon and we indent the next line, we wanted to print that x equals 2. Else with a colon, meaning that if x is not equal to 2, we want it to print that x does not equal to 2. Okay, so we're going to run this, and then it says that x indeed equals to 2. A statement is evaluated as true if one of the following is correct. Number 1 is that the true Boolean variable is given or calculated using an expression, such as an arithmetic comparison. Number 2, that an object which is not considered empty is passed. So here are some examples for objects which is considered as empty. Number 1, an empty string. Number 2, an empty list. Number 3, the number 0. And number 4, the false Boolean variable, which is false. Now we'll talk about the is operator. Unlike the double equals operator, the is operator does not match the values of the variables, but the instances themselves. For example, we'll say that x equals a list. So a list is items that are in between the square brackets. So we open the square bracket, 1, 2, and 3. Those are the items in list X. We close the square bracket, And then the next one is going to be y equals, we open square bracket, 1, 2, 3, and we close the square bracket. Now we want the program to print some stuff. So we want to print that x is equal to y. We're going to check, and it should print out true. And then we want to check if x is y. Then we make a comment that it will print out false. Okay, so let's check. So x equal y is true because they have the same items in their list, but x is not y. There are two separate variables, which is false. Okay, now we'll talk about the not operator. Using not before a Boolean expression inverts it. So we'll say print not false, and that should print true. Prints out true. And then the next one is print in parentheses not false, which is true. So not false equals false, and that should be false. So that will print out false because not false is true and true is not equal to false. So let's run this. So true, true, false, false. Okay. Alright. So the next things are, we're going to talk about our loops. There are two types of loops in Python, for and while. Okay, so the for loop. For loops iterate over a given sequence. Here's an example. Primes equals to a list which are between square brackets. Primes will be 2, 3, 5, and 7, and we close the square bracket. And then now we're going to use the loop. For prime in primes, so for prime, which could be 2, 3, 5, and 7, that are in the list of primes, we put a colon and we indent the next line. I'm sorry. We want to print the prime. Okay, let's execute the code. So it's going to print 2, 3, 5, 7. So what it does, it goes into the list and then it print the prime, which is 2. And then it goes back again and it looks for another one, which is 3. And then it looks for another one, which is 5. And then we look again and there's a 7. And then that's the end of our list. And it stopped the loop. Okay. For loops can iterate over a sequence of numbers using the range and xrange functions. The difference between range and xrange is that the range function returns a new list with numbers of that specified range, whereas xrange returns an iterator, which is more efficient. Note that the xrange function is 0-based. Okay, so we'll make a comment which starts with a hashtag, prints out the numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. our loop will be for x in range, excuse me, for x in x range, we, in between parentheses, put the number 5 and a colon, and then let's add a comment, or range 3 comma 6. No, excuse me, I just jumped the line here. Or range 5. So they're basically equivalent. We want, okay, yeah. So we want to print x. So for x and x range of 5, we want it to print x. Okay, another one. This one, we want it to print out 3, 4, and 5. So for x in x range 3 to 6, we'll add a comment to just explain, or range 3 to 6, we want to print x. Okay, and the last one prints out 3, 4, excuse me, 3, 5, and 7. So the loop for x in x range three, 8, 2, and we'll add a comment, or range 3, 8, and 2. So we close the parenthesis. We want to print x. Okay, these should be closer. Okay, so let's run this. So it's printing 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, 3, 5, 7. Okay. Now we'll talk about the while loop. While loops repeat as long as a certain Boolean condition is met. For example, okay, so this loop prints out 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we'll declare a variable count equal to 0. While count while count is less than 5, colon, and then we indent the next line. We want it to print count, but also we want, after that it prints the count, we want the count to add 1, and it will add 1 to the original count, and then that result will become the new count. This is the same as saying that count equals to count plus 1. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So so the count starts at 0, and then it will add 1 until it hit 5. Well, before it hits 5, because it says while the count is less than 5. It doesn't say less and equal to 5, just less than 5, so it will stop at 4, which it did. The break and continue statements. Break is used to exit for a loop or a while loop, whereas continue is used to skip the current block and return to the for or while statement. So let's write some examples. So this will print out 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. The count will start at 0. So while true, colon, and we indent the next line. I don't know why I'm always saying lane, it's line. Okay, so while true, we want it to print a count. And also, we want a count to increase by 1. And also, we want to put an if statement that if count is greater or equal to 5, and then the if statement we end with a colon. The next line will be indented with a break. Okay? And the other example. Print out only odd numbers. Which will be 1, 3, 5, and 7, and 9. Okay. So for x in x range of 10, right? It starts at 0 all the way to 10 with a colon, the next line indent. Now we're going to check if x is even, first of all, right? Because we want to print the odd numbers. So check if x is even. We'll use an if statement. So if x, the modulo sign 2, so when x is divided by 2 and that the remainder is a 0, equal to 0, colon, the next line indented, we want it to continue. And then we go back to our original, before the indentation, we want it to print x. Okay, so when it finds a number that is even, it will continue the loop until it finds a number that's odd, and then it will print x. So let's run this. Zero, 1, 2, 3, 4. No, that was the first one. Okay, and then 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, which it did. So for the first one, it added 1 to the counter 0 up to 5. And then when it hits the 5, it breaks and it stops. For the next one, for each numbers that are odd, it prints it out. Now we'll talk about functions. So functions are a convenient way to divide your code into useful blocks, allowing us to order our code, make it more readable, reuse it, and save some time. Also, functions are a key way to define interfaces so programmers can share their code. So how do we write functions in Python? So Python makes use of blocks, and a block is an area of code of written format of the block head, and it does with a colon, and then the next few lines will be indented. Where a block line is more Python code, and the block head is of the following format, which is a block underscore keyword block underscore name, and then open parentheses with the different arguments. Block keywords you already know as if, for, and while. Function in Python are defined using the block keyword def, followed with the function's name as the block's name. So for example, def. And then we name our function, which in this case we'll put my underscore function, and with some empty parentheses, just as an example, with a colon at the end. The next line is indented. We want it to print hello from my function. Okay, so this is a function. Okay, and then we can also say then we wanted to print my function. So the function is a function. Well, it's kind of, because I didn't put any arguments in there, but basically it prints out this thing here. Okay. Functions may also receive arguments, variables passed from the caller to the function. So for example, def my underscore function with arguments, args. That's the name of our function. And then for arguments, between parentheses, we'll write username, and then greetings. We close the parentheses, and a colon. The next line is indented. We say that we want to print the string hello, and then we put the percentage s from my function I wish you percentage s, and the quote. Then after that we'll put the percentage, and we wanted to use username and greeting. Okay, so if we run this, now it doesn't run anything, but that's an example of it's basically memorized that function, and then we can use it to do other things with it. Okay. Functions may return a value to the caller using the keyword return. For example, def sum underscore to underscore numbers, in parentheses we'll give a comma b, close parentheses, colon. We want to return A plus B. Okay? So it gives you this function gives you A and B, and you want it to return the sum of A and B. So A plus B. Okay, so how do you call functions in Python? Well, you simply write a function's name followed by parentheses, placing any required arguments within the brackets. For example, let's call the function written above in the previous example. Okay? So if we, let's say, okay, so this will be a comment, print a simple greeting. Okay, we can say my function, that will be the name of our function. Next, as a comment, prints hello John Doe from my function. I wish you a great year. So we want our function to print that sentence, which is a string. The way to do this, we'll use my underscore function and add arguments. So we'll just write it down. In between parentheses, we'll put the arguments that we want, which will be a string John Doe and a string that says a great year, which that's our greeting. Then we close a parenthesis. So next, we can always do this with numbers as well. After this line, x will hold the value 3. So x equal the sum of two numbers in parentheses 1 and 2. Okay? And that's not going to return anything, but they're just examples. Oh, I forgot to close my John Doe. And then a great year. Okay. My function parentheses. Let's make sure everything's okay here. Prints hello. My function with arguments is John Doe and a great year. And then x is the sum of the two numbers. Okay. Alright, next. We're going to talk about classes and objects. So, objects are an encapsulation of variables and functions into a single entity. Objects get their variables and functions from classes. Classes are essentially a template to create your objects. So a very basic class would look something like this. So class, my class. So before we would put def and the name of your function. In this case, class and the name of your class. colon. The next line is indented. We're going to say that variable equals blah. Well, that's kind of strange, but so the variable equals blah. And then we, still in the same indentation, we'll write that a function, def function with the argument self, colon, next line indented, we print this is a message inside the class. Okay, so that's an example of a class. Now we'll explain why you have to include that self as a parameter a little bit later. But first, to assign the above class template to an object, you would do the following. Saying something like, my object X equals to my class and empty parentheses. Okay. Now the variable myObjectX holds an object of the class myClass that contains the variable and the function defined within the class called myClass. Okay, so the variable myObjectX is the class, basically. So I don't know, the wording is a little confusing, but basically it's almost saying that my object X variable equals a function, sort of. It's equal to a class that has a function in it. And then to access object variables, we would write that my object X period variable. So we would access that, and then we could print that variable my object X period variable. Okay. You can create multiple different objects that are the same class, have the same variables and function defined. However, each object contains independent copies of the variables defined in the class. For instance, if we were to define another object with the myClass class and then change the string in the variable above. Okay, so you could change that variable. So let's see here. Okay, so my object X. Okay, this time's gonna be Y. My object Y equals my class empty bracket, and then my object Y period variable will be equal to Yakety. So the first one is blah, the second one will be Yakety. Then we print out our values. Print my object X period variable, which this would print blah, and then we want to print my object Y variable, and as a comment this would print Yakety. Okay. Accessing the object functions. We would write it something like this: my object x period function with uh, the parenthesis. So this above message, no, sorry, the above would print out the message. This is a message inside the class. Okay, so the function here, the def function itself prints this is a message inside the class. Then when you take the my object x and with the period function, then it prints out the function. Okay, next, dictionaries. A dictionary is a data type similar to arrays, but works with keys and values instead of indexes. Each value stored in a dictionary can be accessed using a key, which is any type of object, which could be a string, a number, a list, etc., instead of using its index to address it. For example, a database of phone numbers could be stored using a dictionary like this. Okay. So we'll say that a phone book is going to be our dictionaries, and dictionaries items are in between squiggly brackets. Okay, so to add to our phone book, we can say that the phone book and the item that's going to go in the dictionary is going to be in square brackets. We'll put the string John, so we'll put John's phone number in there. Okay, and then that's going to be equal to his phone number, which could be something like 938 555 4567. Okay, and then we'll make another one with phone book, square bracket, Jack's number, close the square bracket, and his phone number will be equal to 938 555 9876. And then a third one, the phone book, open square bracket, that will be Jill's number, and then close the square bracket, and her number equals to 938 555 1357. Okay. So that's one way of doing it. But also, what you could do is say phone book equals, and you open the squiggly bracket, and then on the next line will be indented, and then you'll say that John with a colon and his phone number 938 555 4567 with a comma at the end, and then the next line you would just put Jack's number and 938 555 9876, and then the same thing for Jill, 938 555 1357, and then at the end you close your squiggly bracket. So those are two ways of adding to the dictionary phone book. Okay, so iterating over dictionaries. Dictionaries can be iterated over just like a list. However, a dictionary, unlike the list, does not keep the order of the values stored in it. To iterate over key value pairs, use the following syntax. Okay, so for name and number in phone book. So for name, comma, number in phone book, period, are either items, empty parentheses with a colon, next line is indented, print phone number of some string is some number, and then we'll give that string a number, which is percentage. Open parentheses, name and number. Okay. Oh, here I forgot to put the comma. Okay, so phone number of Jill is this, and phone number of John is, and phone number of Jack is. So they don't necessarily put it in order of what's in the dictionary. Now, to remove a specified index, we use one of the following notation. So you could say, we could use delete, D-E-L, and then phone book, so the name of the dictionary, and the particular key that you would like to be deleted in square bracket, John, close square bracket. Or we could say, so from the dictionary phone book, we want to pop out basically. So phone book, period, pop. We want to pop in parentheses, John. So those two will delete the key John from a dictionary. Okay. So we'll stop here for today. Next time we'll talk about modules and packages. I want to thank you so much for just listening and relaxing. And I will see you next time. If you're new, please subscribe. And if you like this video, just give it a thumbs up. That would be great. I'll talk to you guys later.